Something is wrong.
Open the gates.
Your father lied to you.
The bells are not ringing from the towers.
If your father left something here, we need to know what it is.
The dead are not beneath the kingdom. You were always meant to come home.
Tonight, the lie ends.
The palace fell in silence. Not the silence of peace. The silence that came immediately before something terrible decided to breathe. Elara opened her eyes beneath a blanket of dust. For several seconds, she could not remember where she was. Then she heard Rowan. "Princess." His voice came from somewhere nearby. Elara pushed a broken stone from her shoulder and sat up. The great hall that had once represented the power of House Veyr was gone. Columns had collapsed across the floor. The royal banners burned slowly beneath fallen beams. Smoke crawled through the ruined ceiling. Kael was standing several paces away, staring into the darkness beneath the palace. Rowan pulled Elara to her feet. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head. "No." Kael did not look at them. "That thing is awake." Elara followed his gaze. Beneath the shattered floor, an enormous red light pulsed. Once. Twice. Like the heartbeat of something buried beneath the world. Then the light disappeared. The three of them stood motionless. "What was that?" Rowan asked. Kael finally turned. "The first king." Elara stared at him. "You know who he is?" "No. You just called him the first king." "Because that is what your father called him." Elara stepped closer. "My father knew about this?" Kael nodded. "He knew more than anyone." "Then why did he die without telling me?" Kael's expression hardened. "Because someone made sure he couldn't." Before Elara could respond, the palace shook again. A distant roar came from below. Not the roar of an animal. It sounded like thousands of voices screaming from inside one throat. The dead began moving. They climbed over the ruins, dragging broken armor behind them. Seraphine stood at the center of the devastation. Her black dress was covered with dust. Her eyes remained fixed on the hole beneath the palace. For the first time, Elara noticed fear in the Queen of the Dead. "Why are you afraid?" Elara asked. Seraphine slowly looked at her. "Because I remember him." "Who?" Seraphine's face became almost sorrowful. "The man who taught death how to obey." A tremor passed through the ground. Seraphine turned toward the dead army. "Move." The undead soldiers began retreating. Rowan raised his sword. "They're running." Kael shook his head. "No." He watched the darkness below. "They're making room." A gigantic hand rose from beneath the ruins. It was larger than a man. Its fingers were black and bone wrapped in ancient armor. It gripped the edge of the broken palace floor. Then another hand appeared. The dead soldiers stepped backward. Even Seraphine lowered her head. The ancient king pulled himself from the darkness. He was enormous. His body was covered in armor that looked as though it had been forged from obsidian and bone. A broken crown rested on his skull. Chains hung from his shoulders, dragging across the stone. His eyes burned with a red light deeper than fire. When he stood, the palace seemed to become smaller. Elara could not breathe. The king looked at her. Not at Seraphine. Not at Kael. At her. The last blood. His voice shook dust from the ceiling. Elara raised her father's sword. I am Elara Veyr. The ancient king tilted his head. No. He stepped forward. You are what remains of him. Elara's grip tightened. Who are you? The king looked toward the sky through the ruined palace. I was Aldrin. Elara froze. Her father's name. The ancient king continued. Before he was your father, he was my son. The world seemed to stop. Kael stared at the creature. Rowan lowered his sword. Elara whispered. That is impossible. The king looked at her. Your history is built upon impossible things. Then he pointed toward Kael. And that man carries the blood of the executioner. Kael stepped forward. My father? The ancient king nodded. The man who killed the first king. Silence. Elara looked from the ancient king to Kael. You said my father was his son. Kael's expression changed. Then your family did not imprison him. The ancient king smiled. No. His gaze returned to Elara. They served me. The revelation struck harder than the collapsing palace. For generations, House Veyr had claimed to protect the kingdom from the dead. But the truth was far worse. The royal family had been guarding the prison because they were its prisoners too. A horn sounded outside. Then another. Soldiers were approaching. Rowan looked toward the broken gates. The army. Elara turned. Thousands of Veyr soldiers filled the streets. They had come to defend the capital. But they did not know what stood beneath it. The ancient king lifted one hand. Every undead soldier in the palace stopped. Do not fight them. Seraphine looked at him. They will attack. Let them. The king's voice became colder. Let the living see what their kings buried. Then he walked toward the center of the ruined hall. The dead followed him. Seraphine hesitated before disappearing into the shadows. Elara watched her go. Where is she going? To prepare the throne, the ancient king answered. Elara looked at him. What throne? The king pointed downward. The one beneath Veyr. The survivors escaped through an underground passage before the soldiers could reach the ruins. Rowan led the way. Kael followed. Elara walked between them, carrying her father's sword. Behind them, the ancient king remained in the palace. He had not tried to stop them. That frightened Elara more than an attack would have. The tunnel was narrow and ancient. Its walls were covered with carvings. Kings. Wars. Executions. Births. Deaths. And beneath every image was the same symbol. The split tree. White on one side. Red on the other. Kael stopped before one carving. Elara looked at it. A man stood before a kneeling army. A crown rested upon his head. Behind him were mountains of corpses. Kael pointed toward the man's face. That is him. The ancient king. Elara stared. Then why does he look human? Because he was. Rowan approached. How long ago? Kael studied the carving. Before Veyr. Elara looked at him. Before the kingdom. Kael nodded. He was the first ruler of these lands. They continued walking. After several minutes, they reached a circular chamber. 7 doors surrounded the walls. Above each door was a bell carved into the stone. Elara recognized the symbols. The 7 gates. Rowan looked at her. Which one? Elara had no answer. Then her father's sword began glowing. A faint red line appeared along its blade. It pointed toward the 7th door. Elara stepped forward. The door opened by itself. A wave of cold struck them. Inside was a chamber filled with statues. Every statue was a member of House Veyr. Kings. Queens. Princes. Princesses. All kneeling. All facing a throne. But the throne was empty. At its base was a message. Elara read it aloud. When the final heir comes, the throne shall choose its king. She looked at Rowan. What does that mean? A voice answered from behind them. It means the throne has already chosen. Seraphine stepped into the chamber. Her eyes were fixed on Elara. Kael raised his sword. Seraphine ignored him. Your father knew this day would come. Elara's voice trembled. Why did he hide the truth? Because he loved you. The answer surprised her. Seraphine continued. He knew that if you learned what lived beneath Veyr, you would try to destroy it. Wouldn't that be the right thing? Seraphine smiled sadly. Perhaps. She looked toward the empty throne. But destroying him would destroy the kingdom. Elara frowned. Why? Because Veyr was built upon his heart. The chamber became silent. Seraphine walked toward the throne. For 1,000 years, the king beneath the earth has fed the kingdom. Its rivers, its harvests, its walls, its victories. Every king who sat upon the golden throne above this chamber borrowed his power. Elara shook her head. You're lying. I wish I were. Seraphine touched the throne. The living called it a kingdom. Her eyes darkened. We called it a tomb. Above them, Veyr burned. The army had entered the palace. Soldiers searched the ruins. They found no enemy. Only bones. Then the first dead soldier rose. A captain drove his sword through its chest. The corpse fell. 3 more rose. Then 30. Then hundreds. The soldiers screamed. The dead began advancing. Not toward the palace. Toward the city. The streets filled with undead soldiers. But they did not kill everyone. They passed the living. They walked toward the central square. There, beneath the statue of the first king, they stopped. One by one, they knelt. The statue cracked. Its stone face fell away. Beneath it was a hidden doorway. The dead entered. And the city bells began ringing again. Elara returned to the surface just before dawn. The capital looked like another world. Smoke covered the streets. Bodies lay beneath torn banners. The surviving soldiers stood in silence. No one knew whether they had won. Then the palace gates opened. A messenger rode toward Elara. Your Highness. He dismounted. The people are gathering. Why? The messenger looked terrified. They're asking for the king. Elara stared at him. Which king? He looked toward the ruined palace. The dead one. Elara understood. The city had seen him. The people had heard his voice. And now they were beginning to remember. Across Veyr, old citizens emerged from their homes carrying candles. They walked toward the palace. Some cried. Some prayed. Others smiled. A woman whispered. My grandmother told me about him. An old man answered. They said he would return. Elara watched the crowd grow. Rowan stood beside her. This isn't an invasion. No, Elara said. She looked toward the ruined throne room. It is a coronation. Kael joined them. His face was grim. Then we have to reach the throne before they do. Elara looked at him. And if the throne has already chosen? Kael stared into the darkness. Then we destroy it. For the first time, Elara did not disagree. She turned toward the palace. The sun began rising behind the mountains. But instead of gold, the morning sky was red. And beneath the capital, an ancient throne waited. The dead were gathering. The living were remembering. And somewhere beneath the earth, the first king was preparing to reclaim his kingdom. Elara tightened her grip around her father's sword. She stepped forward. The gates opened. And she walked into the kingdom her family had spent 1,000 years hiding from her. If you want to discover what waits beneath Veyr, subscribe to the Chronicles of Bones and Ash and continue this journey. The truth about Elara's bloodline has only begun to surface, and the throne beneath the kingdom is waiting for its rightful ruler. Like the video and leave your theory in the comments before Batch 3 reveals what happened to the first king. By sunrise, the people of Veyr had stopped screaming. Fear had changed into something quieter. Something worse. They were waiting. Across the capital, thousands stood beneath the red morning sky, staring toward the ruined palace. Smoke drifted between the towers. Ash settled upon rooftops and streets like black snow. No one knew what would happen next. But everyone could feel that something had changed. The old world had ended during the night. Elara stood on the palace steps with Rowan and Kael beside her. Before them, the surviving soldiers had formed a defensive line. Behind them stood the people. And beyond them, beneath the broken palace, the dead were waiting. Kael looked toward the crowd. They're not afraid anymore. Elara watched an old woman kneel in the street. She held a small wooden cross in her hands. Instead of praying, she was staring at the palace. My grandmother used to tell me stories, the woman whispered. Elara heard her. Stories about what? The woman looked up. The king beneath the earth. Rowan frowned. What did she say? That he would return when the royal blood became weak. Elara felt cold. My blood? The woman nodded. She said the final heir would open the door. Elara looked toward the palace. I didn't open anything. Kael answered quietly. You were born with the key. Before Elara could respond, the ground shook. Every person in the square fell silent. A crack spread through the stone beneath the palace steps. Then another. A deep sound rose from below. A heartbeat. Boom. 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 The ancient rhythm moved through the city. Windows shattered. Horses collapsed. Children cried. Then the 7 bells rang. All at once. The sound was deafening. Elara covered her ears. When the bells stopped, the palace doors opened. Seraphine stood inside. She was alone. No army behind her. No crown upon her head. She looked toward Elara. Come with me. Rowan immediately raised his sword. You're not taking her anywhere. Seraphine looked at him. You still believe your sword can protect her? Rowan stepped forward. I believe it can protect her from you. Seraphine's expression softened. You have no idea what is coming. Kael moved beside Rowan. Then tell us. Seraphine looked at him. The first king has remembered his name. Kael's face tightened. What is his name? Seraphine whispered. Veyr. The name seemed to disturb the air itself. Several people in the crowd gasped. An old priest collapsed to his knees. Veyr, he whispered. Elara looked around. You know that name? The priest stared at her. Every priest knows it. Then why was it erased from our history? The priest looked toward the palace. Because the truth was too dangerous to remember. Seraphine turned away. The truth is no longer sleeping. She walked into the palace. After a moment, Elara followed. The passage beneath Veyr descended farther than before. Elara, Rowan, Kael, and Seraphine walked in silence. The walls changed as they descended. The stones became older. The carvings became stranger. The faces of the kings disappeared. In their place were images of something else. A man standing before an ocean. A man holding a burning crown. A man surrounded by corpses. A man kneeling before an enormous tree. The final carving showed Valor. He stood beneath the split tree. On one side grew white branches. On the other side, red branches. Beneath him knelt thousands of people. Not dead. Living. Elara stopped. He was worshipped. Seraphine nodded. He was their king. Then why did they kill him? They didn't. Elara turned. Who did? Seraphine looked directly at her. Your family. Silence. Kael stepped forward. You said the executioner carried my blood. Yes. Who was he? Seraphine's eyes moved toward him. His name was Arven. Kael froze. My ancestor. The first Arven. Seraphine continued walking. He was Valor's most trusted knight. Kael followed. What happened? Valor discovered something beneath the earth. What? Death. Elara frowned. Death? Seraphine nodded. He discovered that death was not an ending. It was a doorway. They reached an enormous stone door. 7 locks covered its surface. Each lock bore a royal symbol. Elara approached. The 7th lock opened. No key. No touch. It simply opened when she stood before it. Rowan stared. She really is the key. Seraphine looked at Elara. She always was. The other 6 locks opened. The door moved. A wave of darkness poured through the chamber. Beyond it was a cavern so enormous that Elara could not see the ceiling. At its center stood a black throne. Valor sat upon it. His chains were gone. He looked almost human now. He wore ancient armor. His crown rested upon his head. And beside him stood King Aldrin. Elara stopped breathing. Father. Aldrin looked at her. His face was pale. But he was alive. Elara ran toward him. Rowan grabbed her arm. Wait. She struggled. That's my father. Aldrin raised his hand. It's all right. Elara broke free and reached him. She touched his face. Warm. Real. Tears filled her eyes. You're alive. Aldrin smiled sadly. Not anymore. Elara shook her head. No. I have been dead since the night you were born. She stared at him. What? Aldrin looked toward Valor. I made a bargain. Valor remained silent. Aldrin continued. When you were born, the seal was failing. Your mother was dying. The kingdom was starving. War had returned to the northern provinces. He looked at Elara. I asked Valor to save you. Elara's voice broke. You made a deal with him. Yes. What did you give him? Aldrin lowered his eyes. My life. Elara began crying. But you're here. Because the dead keep their promises differently than the living. Valor finally spoke. And now the debt belongs to her. Elara turned. What debt? Valor stood. His presence filled the cavern. Your blood. The chains around the throne began moving. Aldrin stepped backward. No. Valor looked at him. You knew the agreement. I never agreed to this. You agreed when you asked me to save her. Elara looked between them. What does he want? Valor pointed toward the darkness behind the throne. A king requires a kingdom. He looked at her. And a kingdom requires a ruler. Elara understood. You want me to sit on the throne? Valor smiled. No. The cavern shook. I want you to become the throne. Rowan attacked. He moved faster than Elara could react. His sword struck Vaylor's armor. The blade shattered. Rowan was thrown across the chamber. Rowan! Elara ran toward him. He was alive. Barely. Kael drew his sword. Seraphine stepped between them. Stop. Kael glared at her. You expect us to stand here? You cannot fight him. Kael raised his sword. Then I'll die trying. Seraphine looked at him with something resembling respect. That is exactly what your ancestor said. Kael froze. Seraphine reached into her cloak. She removed an ancient sword. The blade was black. Its edge shimmered with a faint white light. She handed it to Kael. This belonged to Arven. Kael stared at it. You kept it. Your ancestor gave it to me before he died. Why? He knew what Vaylor would become. Kael accepted the sword. What can it do? Nothing. Kael looked at her. Then why give it to me? Because the sword doesn't need to kill Vaylor. Seraphine looked at Elara. It only needs to wound the throne. Elara understood. The throne was not a chair. It was part of the ancient magic. Destroying it might destroy Vaylor's connection to the living world. But it could also destroy Veyr. Aldrin stepped forward. Elara, don't. She looked at him. Why? Because your blood is the only thing holding the kingdom together. She stared at him. You knew. I tried to protect you. You lied to me. I lied because I loved you. Her tears fell. You let me grow up believing you were a hero. Aldrin looked broken. I wanted you to have a childhood. You gave me a kingdom built on corpses. He had no answer. Vaylor watched them. Then he spoke. Enough. The cavern shook. Every dead king buried beneath Veyr opened its eyes. Vaylor extended his hand. The throne began glowing. Elara felt something pull inside her chest. She screamed. A red mark appeared across her palm. The same split tree. Vaylor smiled. The blood remembers. Elara fell to her knees. Kael rushed toward her. Seraphine stopped him. Wait. What are you doing? Watching. Elara looked up. Watching what? Seraphine's expression became strange. Whether you are truly your father's daughter. Elara stared at her. Then she understood. Seraphine wasn't waiting for Elara to surrender. She was waiting for her to choose. Elara looked at the throne. Then at Vaylor. Then at her father. She slowly stood. I won't become your queen. Vaylor's smile disappeared. Elara raised her father's sword. I won't become your throne. She looked at Kael. And I won't let this kingdom belong to the dead. Vaylor's eyes burned brighter. Then what will you become? Elara stepped toward him. The end of your kingdom. The cavern erupted. Bones rose from the floor. Thousands of undead warriors charged. Kael raised Arven's ancient sword. Rowan, wounded but standing, picked up a fallen spear. Seraphine removed her black crown. For the first time, she stood beside the living. Elara lifted her father's sword. And the battle for Veyr began beneath the earth. Not between the living and the dead. But between the past and the future. If you want to see whether Elara can break the ancient bloodline that has controlled Veyr for 1,000 years, subscribe to the Chronicles of Bones and Ash. The truth about Vaylor, King Aldrin, and the blood of the first king has finally been revealed. Like the video, share the story, and leave your prediction for what happens when Elara faces Vaylor. The first scream came from the dead. It was followed by thousands more. The cavern beneath Veyr erupted into violence. Ancient warriors surged across the black stone floor, their armor clattering as they charged toward Elara and the handful of living soldiers beside her. Bones cracked beneath their feet. Red light poured from the throne chamber, turning every shadow into something monstrous. Elara raised her father's sword. "Hold the line." Rowan moved first. He drove his spear into the chest of an undead soldier and pushed the corpse backward. Another attacked from the side. Kael intercepted it. Arven's ancient sword cut through the creature's armor. The dead warrior collapsed. But 3 more stepped over its body. "They don't stop," Rowan shouted. Elara looked across the battlefield. There were too many. For every corpse they destroyed, another emerged from the darkness. Then Seraphine raised both hands. The entire cavern froze. Every undead soldier stopped. Valer looked at her. "Traitor." Seraphine looked back. "I have been your servant for 1,000 years. She removed a black ring from her finger. "But I was never your slave." The ring shattered. A wave of white light exploded across the chamber. Hundreds of undead soldiers fell. Kael stared. "What did you do?" Seraphine's face twisted with pain. "I remembered who I was." The white light disappeared. The dead began rising again. But something had changed. Their eyes were no longer red. They were white. They looked toward Seraphine. Then they turned against Valer. The first king roared. "You dare." Seraphine smiled sadly. "I have been waiting a very long time to say no." Valer lifted his hand. The cavern shook. Seraphine was thrown across the chamber. Elara caught her before she struck the wall. "Why are you helping us?" Seraphine looked at her. "Because I remember being you." Elara frowned. "You were once alive." "Yes." "Who were you?" Seraphine looked toward Valer. "His daughter." Elara stared. Valer's face changed. For the first time, something like grief crossed his expression. Seraphine continued. "He loved me once." Valer's voice echoed through the chamber. "You betrayed me. You destroyed everything I loved. You were weak. I was human." Valer stepped toward them. "You were mine." Seraphine stood. "No." She looked at Elara. "I was never anyone's." Then Valer attacked. The impact split the cavern. Elara was thrown backward. Kael rolled across the floor. Rowan disappeared beneath falling stone. Valer moved with impossible speed. His hand closed around Seraphine's throat. "You should have remained dead." Seraphine struggled. "You should have remained buried." Valer slammed her against a pillar. The pillar broke. Elara charged. Her father's sword struck Valer across the chest. A line of white fire opened in his armor. Valer looked down. For the first time, blood appeared. Black blood. He looked at Elara. "Your father gave you that sword." "Yes." "He never told you what it was." "No." Valer reached toward the wound. The black blood turned white. The wound widened. Valer stepped backward. Elara stared. "What did I do?" Kael answered. "The sword is hurting him." Valer's expression became furious. He raised his hand. Kael flew across the chamber. Rowan threw himself between Valer and Elara. The ancient king struck him. Rowan crashed into the stone floor. "Rowan!" Elara dropped beside him. He coughed blood. "Don't stop." She looked at him. "What?" "Whatever you're doing." He tried to stand. "Don't stop." Elara rose. She looked at Valer. Then at the throne. Seraphine's words returned. The sword doesn't need to kill Valor. It only needs to wound the throne. Elara understood. The throne was the heart. Valor was only its king. The throne was the kingdom. She ran. Kael saw what she was doing. Elara. Valor turned. No. The first king chased her. Elara reached the throne. Its surface was covered with thousands of names. Every name belonged to someone who had died beneath Veyr. She lifted the sword. Valor appeared behind her. You will destroy your own kingdom. Elara turned. You already did. She struck the throne. The blade entered black stone. A shockwave exploded through the cavern. Every dead soldier screamed. The 7 bells above Veyr rang. The ground split. Buildings collapsed. The river changed direction. The people in the streets fell to their knees. Valor screamed. No. Elara struck again. The throne cracked. A white light emerged from inside it. Then another. The names carved into the stone began disappearing. One by one. The dead began remembering their lives. A soldier dropped his weapon. He looked at his hands. I had a daughter. Another corpse whispered. I was a farmer. Another. I had a home. The undead army began collapsing. Not dying. Resting. Their bones fell peacefully to the floor. Valor roared. He seized Elara by the throat. You don't understand what you are destroying. Elara struggled. What am I destroying? My kingdom. Elara looked into his burning eyes. No. She smiled through the pain. Your prison. She drove the broken sword into his chest. White light exploded. Valor released her. The ancient king staggered backward. For a moment, he looked almost human. Then his crown fell. It struck the floor. And shattered. Aldrin watched from the edge of the chamber. Elara turned toward him. Father. He smiled. The spectral light around his body was fading. You did what I could not. Elara approached him. Can you come with us? Aldrin shook his head. No. Please. I've been waiting for this moment. For what? To see you choose your own life. Elara began crying. I don't know what to do. Aldrin touched her face. You don't have to know. He looked toward the collapsing throne. Just don't become what we were. Elara held his hand. I forgive you. Aldrin closed his eyes. Those were the last words he heard. His body became ash. The ash rose into the air. Then disappeared. Elara fell to her knees. For several seconds, she simply cried. Rowan stood nearby. Kael lowered his sword. Seraphine watched silently. Then the cavern shook again. Kael looked upward. The palace is collapsing. Seraphine nodded. The throne is dying. Elara stood. What happens when it dies? Seraphine looked at her. Veyr dies with it. Elara froze. What? The throne was holding the kingdom together. Kael looked toward the cavern ceiling. Then we have minutes. Seraphine nodded. Perhaps less. Rowan stepped forward. How do we stop it? Seraphine looked at Elara's hand. The split tree mark was glowing brighter. There is one way. Elara looked at her. What? You must take the throne's power into yourself. Silence. Kael shook his head. No. Seraphine continued. If the power remains in the throne, the kingdom collapses. Elara understood. And if I take it? Seraphine looked away. You become what Valor wanted. Elara stared at the broken throne. Then she looked toward the tunnel leading to the surface. Thousands of people were above them. Children. Families. Soldiers. The living. She closed her eyes. I'll do it. Kael grabbed her arm. No. She looked at him. You heard her. You'll die. Maybe. Elara. She pulled free. My family built this kingdom on lies. She looked toward the surface. I won't let innocent people pay for them. She stepped toward the broken throne. Seraphine followed. You may never be human again. Elara looked at her. Then I'll remember what it means to be. She placed her hand against the throne. The world went white. Across Veyr, every candle went out. The bells stopped. The red sky became blue. The dead disappeared from the streets. Then the palace began to collapse. People screamed. But the walls stopped falling. Stone froze in midair. The black river rose above its banks. Then settled. The cracks across the city began closing. The kingdom survived. But beneath the ruins, something else had been born. Elara opened her eyes. She stood before the broken throne. The red mark on her hand was gone. In its place was a white scar shaped like a tree. Kael approached slowly. Elara. She turned. Her eyes looked different. Not red. Not white. Something between. Seraphine stared at her. What did you do? Elara looked toward the ruined throne. I don't know. A voice whispered from somewhere beneath the earth. Not Valor. Something else. Something older. The first kingdom has fallen. Elara looked into the darkness. Then the voice continued. Now the second must rise. The cavern went silent. Kael looked at Seraphine. What does that mean? Seraphine's face had gone pale. It means Valor wasn't the beginning. Elara looked at her. What was he? Seraphine whispered. A warning. Far beneath them, something answered. 3 enormous bells rang from the darkness. The first. The second. The third. Seraphine closed her eyes. There are 7. Elara tightened her grip around the broken sword. Then we find out who rings the other 4. Above them, the first light of morning entered the ruined palace. The kingdom of the dead had fallen. But something far older had awakened. And Elara Veyr was no longer simply the heir to a kingdom. She was now carrying its darkness inside her. If you want to continue into the deeper mystery behind the 7 bells, subscribe to the Chronicles of Bones and Ash. Valor was only a warning, and Elara has unknowingly inherited a power that may be older than death itself. Like the video, share the story. For 3 days, Veyr remained silent. No bells rang. No armies marched. No corpses rose from the earth. The people called it a miracle. Elara knew better. She stood on the highest surviving balcony of the ruined palace, looking across the capital. The city had survived, but it was wounded. Whole districts had collapsed. Smoke still rose from the northern quarter. Hundreds of homes had been destroyed. The royal palace had lost its eastern towers. Yet the people were rebuilding. Children carried stones. Soldiers cleared streets. Families searched for the missing. For the first time in generations, Veyr was rebuilding without waiting for a king to command it. Elara watched them quietly. Rowan approached from behind. You haven't slept. I don't need to. You've said that for 3 days. Elara looked at him. He noticed the change in her eyes. What? Nothing. Don't lie. She looked away. Sometimes I hear something. Rowan became serious. What? A bell. He stared at her. There's no bell ringing. I know. She placed her hand against her chest. It isn't outside. The white scar on her palm began to glow. A faint sound passed through the palace. One bell. Far away. Then silence. Rowan drew his sword. Elara shook her head. It isn't coming for us. How do you know? Because it sounds like it's coming from inside me. Kael had spent 3 days searching the ruins. He found something beneath the old royal library. A room untouched by the collapse. Inside were hundreds of books. Most had turned to dust. One remained intact. Its cover bore the split tree. Kael carried it to Elara. She opened it. The pages described 7 bells. The first had been called the Bell of Blood. It had awakened Valor. The second was the Bell of Ash. The third was the Bell of Bones. The fourth was the Bell of Shadows. The final 3 names had been erased. Elara looked at Kael. Who erased them? Kael turned the page. A symbol appeared. The same mark carved into Arven's sword. Your ancestor. Elara looked at him. Why? Kael shook his head. Maybe he was trying to protect someone. Who? He looked toward the ruined palace. You. Before Elara could answer, the book began moving. Its pages turned by themselves. They stopped on a map. Veyr was marked in black. Beyond the kingdom were 4 other symbols. One in the north. One beneath the sea. One in the western desert. One in the mountains. Elara stared. The bells. Kael nodded. They're not beneath Veyr. Then where? A voice answered from the doorway. Everywhere. Seraphine stood there. She looked older than before. The magic that had sustained her for centuries was fading. Elara closed the book. You knew. Yes. How many kingdoms? Seraphine stepped inside. 4. Rowan frowned. What happens when they ring? Seraphine looked at Elara. The dead won't rise. Then what will? Seraphine's answer was quiet. The things that existed before the dead. That night, Elara dreamed again. She stood on a battlefield. No soldiers. No banners. Only ash. A child walked toward her. He looked no older than 7. His clothes were torn. His eyes were completely black. Elara knelt. Who are you? The child pointed behind her. She turned. A massive army stood in the distance. Not undead. Something worse. Creatures with antlers. Winged shadows. Bodies made from smoke. Giants covered in bone armor. And at their center stood a woman carrying a silver bell. The woman lifted it. The child whispered. Don't let her ring it. Elara turned back. The child was gone. She woke screaming. Rowan entered her room with his sword drawn. What happened? Elara sat upright. The next bell. Where? She looked toward the northern mountains. I saw it. By morning, Kael had assembled a small group. 20 soldiers. Rowan insisted on coming. Seraphine came without being asked. Elara carried the ancient book. They left Veyr before sunrise. The road north crossed forests untouched by war. But the farther they traveled, the stranger the land became. Trees grew without leaves. Birds disappeared. The wind stopped. On the 3rd evening, they found a village. No people. No animals. Only empty houses. Kael entered one. A dinner table remained set. Food had turned black. A child's toy lay beside a chair. Rowan searched the surrounding buildings. Nothing. Then they heard a bell. One strike. Everyone froze. The sound came from the forest. Elara looked at Seraphine. That isn't one of the four. Seraphine's expression changed. No. Another bell rang. Closer. Seraphine whispered. Someone is calling them. A third bell rang. The forest became completely dark. Even though the sun had not yet set. Kael raised his sword. Something moved between the trees. Tall. Thin. Human-shaped. But without a face. It stepped into the road. Then another appeared. Then another. The soldiers formed a circle. Elara raised her sword. The creatures stopped. One of them pointed toward her. And spoke with a child's voice. The heir. Another answered. The bearer. A third whispered. The door. Elara's heart began pounding. Seraphine stepped forward. Leave her. The creatures laughed. Then the entire forest answered. Never. The attack lasted less than a minute. It felt like an hour. The creatures moved faster than arrows. Soldiers disappeared into the darkness. Kael fought two at once. Rowan protected Elara. Seraphine unleashed white fire. But the creatures kept coming. Then Elara heard the bell. Inside her chest. It became louder. Louder. Until she could hear nothing else. The white scar on her hand opened. Not physically. Something inside it opened. Light exploded outward. Every creature froze. Elara looked at them. And suddenly she understood. They were afraid. Not of her sword. Of her. She raised her hand. The creatures fell to their knees. The forest became silent. Elara lowered her hand. What am I? Seraphine stared at her. I don't know anymore. That answer frightened Elara more than anything else. They reached the northern mountains 2 days later. At the summit stood an abandoned fortress. No guards. No banners. No doors. Only a massive bell hanging above the entrance. It was made from black iron. Kael looked at it. This is the bell of blood. Elara approached. The bell began vibrating. No one touched it. A voice came from inside the fortress. Come home. Elara looked at Seraphine. Who is speaking? Seraphine's face went pale. The first queen. Valer's queen. No. Seraphine shook her head. Something older. The fortress doors opened. Inside was darkness. Elara stepped forward. Rowan followed. Kael followed. Seraphine remained behind. Elara looked back. Are you coming? Seraphine looked toward the bell. No. Why? Because the last time I entered that fortress, I was still alive. Elara stared at her. What happened? Seraphine's eyes filled with sorrow. I came out dead. The doors began closing. Elara stepped through. The darkness swallowed her. The bell rang. Once. Across the mountains, thousands of birds exploded into the sky. In distant villages, people dropped to their knees. And beneath the earth, something ancient whispered her name. Elara. She continued walking. The door closed behind her. And somewhere beyond the mountains, another bell answered. If you're following Elara into the Forgotten Fortress, subscribe to the Chronicles of Bones and Ash. The first king was only the beginning, and the 4 silent bells are connected to a mystery older than Veyr itself. Like the video, share the story.